Notice, in accordance with the new copy regulations, this episode of Quoth the Raven is intended for ages 16 and up. While some of the content we sometimes feature is kid-friendly, the context of the episodes is to address adults and inform them of said content for them to research as consumers in service of their youth. In other words, parents, grandparents, aunts and uncles, teachers, librarians, etc. There is always the possibility of adult language present on the episode as well, rated TV 16 and up. And welcome once again, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of Quoth the Raven. I'm your host, Louis Bright Raven, 29-year professional writer, illustrator, and editor of science fiction, fantasy, horror, comics, and role-playing games. And this is our Thursday night edition, so it's our roundtable. I'd like to welcome our guest this week, 40-year veteran, comics and role-playing games. He's a painter, well-known for Magic the Gathering, and fanzine aficionado, Ken Meyer Jr.
How's everybody doing out there?
Yeah, we had 3, and now it's down to 1. I don't know what's going on with that, but that's what happens sometimes.
We're just stuck with 1 this time, just me.
Oh, yeah, who knows? But well, we're going ahead and let people know who you are. I mean, yes, you've been around for a long time.
Oh.
But so have I. It's just that people don't realize it.
Yeah.
Mark Andrew Smith. He's one of the gentlemen. You asked me some of the creators I've had on the show in the past. Mark is one of them. He's a writer. He worked on Pop Gun Anthology as one of the co-editors on Pop Gun Anthology for Image Comics. He did Sullivan Sluggers, and he's best known probably for, well, I don't know about best known, but definitely known for Gladstone School for World Conquerors. That's what we promoted him for most recently. And he's watching. And,
well, good. We have 1 person watching.
We got 2. Pop Culture Avenger came over.
Our audience already.
Yes. Pop Culture Avenger is saying greetings. How you doing there, Avenger? I figured you'd be over there by the professionals. Yeah. Ken was very kind to kind of get my fat out of the fire this week. It's been a rough day. As I was telling him before the show, we had a car hit a telephone pole and knock out the power in our neighborhood for about 4.5 hours today. And then my original guests decided they weren't going to show up, and I was scrambling trying to find anybody that would even come on. And it was like everybody was booked this week. And even Ken was booked. He was so kind to bow out of his other interview early to come.
Well, that was like a real freak occurrence, because it's not like I do interviews that often. It just happened that both actually came together within like an hour of each other. I was talking to one guy on Facebook that I'd done an interview with before, and he said, "Can you come in tonight?" And I said, "Okay, sure." And then I talked to you about half an hour later, and you told me about your dilemma. So I figured, okay, well, I'll just cut out early, because he had a bunch of people he could talk to anyway. It wasn't just me.
Yeah, that's cool. And then one of our regular guests, this is my co-host on Fridays most of the time, John Norris. He says good evening.
Hey, John.
Now, we have met, but it's been a long time. It was the early 90s.
You and me?
Yeah, we've met.
Really?
Yeah, we met at Motor City Con.
I remember faces really well, but I'm really bad with names. Terrible.
Yeah. Well, it's been 30 years, I think. I mean, it was like 92 or 93.
Was it at San Diego at the Caliber booth or something, or what?
I was pretty sure it was either Caliber at San Diego, or did you ever come out to Motor City?
No, never been to that one.
Okay, so that must have been when I went to San Diego then. I must have gone with Gary for that.
Yeah, and that was one of the. Well, I never lived anywhere when I was younger that had a convention near enough that I could go to. In San Diego, the very first San Diego I went to, I think I was living in Vegas at the time, and so I drove out as just an attendee. That was in 1989, I think. And and actually, well, I think that's where I met Steve Matson, who I did some work with later. But that was pretty much around the time that I met Joe Pruitt somewhere,
Okay.
and he was my road into Caliber.
Right.
And then I started going to San Diego the very next year, I think 1990, and had a spot in Alice at Artist Alley and a booth once or twice.
Mhm.
So that's probably where we met, was at San Diego.
Yeah, it had to be San Diego. I did San Diego. My first San Diego was 92 or 93, and then I did 96 through 2002.
Yeah, I've gone for about 25 years. I think I missed one or two, like when I was living in Georgia. It was a lot harder to come out. So
Right.
I think I probably missed 2 or 3 at that time.
Okay. One of my other regulars, Nighthawk Warrior, said he shared the stream. You know, he shared the link, but he's not staying tonight.
Thanks for that.
Yeah, but well, he's gee, I think he's like 17 or 18. I think he's got school
Oh,
in the morning.
good.
So,
That's good.
but yeah, it's yeah, like I was telling you before, I was going to school at Central Michigan University at that time, and my end to Caliber was John Dennis, who was the artist on The Realm.
Okay.
Oh, he says he's 20. Okay. I thought he was 17 or 18. Okay. Okay, sorry about that.
Yeah, Caliber was even a bigger deal for me, and I think it was either right before Caliber or maybe right after. But I did a real goofy series for Eclipse called, or I worked on an issue or two of adolescent radioactive black belt hamsters, or at least an offshoot of that, a spinoff.
No, they're not. See, I did not know that. Now we have to go hunting looking for that.
Yeah, it was fun. I mean, I did basically one of the characters, Clint, spun off into a very short series, like a 2-issue series, and I did the covers and the pencils. Mike Dringenberg did the inks, and I helped with the writing. Don Chin, they were his characters, and he did the writing on them. And then towards the end of the main comics run, I did a short story in, I think, the last issue, which I think was issue 9 or something. But I did a lot of work for Caliber. Caliber is the company that I probably did the most comic work for.
Yeah.
It wasn't necessarily the most highly visible comic work that I did, but it definitely the most work, because in addition to like 5 issues of interiors for Kilroy's here, and then covers for like maybe 10 or 12 issues, there was a lot of like little short stories and things here and there, and covers here and there for some of their other comics, like Dominique, and a lot of stuff on Negative Burn and things like that.
I was going to say Negative Burn, yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, Joe kept you busy.
Yeah, it was great. I even did a painting for Gary, like maybe a year before he died, for a comic I don't think that ever came out. I mean, stuff for Caliber was just like, after that first run of a lot of stuff at once, it petered out, and then he was.
You got to remember, the market shifted on us with the diamond monopoly, and I was there from 92 to about May of 94 when I graduated. I was planning to stay with Caliber, but my parents had sold the house because Wurtsmith Air Force Base had closed up in Upper Michigan, and they had to go find a place where they could get their military benefits.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
They moved out to Nevada.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I've lived there too.
You just said Vegas.
I've lived so many places.
We were down by Laughlin.
Okay.
So you know where we're at. And I was supposed to come back and join Joe and Jim as the trio, as Kevin Van Hook was leaving over for Valiant.
Oh, okay.
or had already left for Valiant, I should say. And my mother had her first health issues, and I couldn't come back. So
Right,
I
right.
had to step out. And then Joe and Jim were pretty much, the guys as editors at that point.
Yeah.
Obviously, Gary was the head guy, but, but, and then basically what would happen is when the internet came more into function and you could send files back and forth, Gary would send me stuff and say, hey, what do you think about this guy? Or,
Right, right.
type thing. I'm really looking into this, I like this artist or I like this writer. What do you think? Type thing, would basically be what it was. And then we had the Diamond, Marvel buying Heroes World and Diamond monopolizing. I don't know how much money Gary lost, but it was millions.
Oh man.
From all the stuff that wasn't paid for by the other distributors that went out. He asks if you were in Pop Culture Avenger asks if you were also in Caliber Presents.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
were?
Yeah, there was actually, if I remember right, that's where I did this series with what's his name? He's a really well-known writer. But it was a series called Atmospherics, and it was sort of like X-Files-ish kind of thing. There was a black and white painted book. And I think that was in Caliber Presents. Yeah.
I'm checking to make sure.
I can't believe I can't remember the writer's name because he's really well known. And it was a big deal, to work with him at that time. Warren Ellis. There you go.
Yeah. Let's see. That would have been, let's see. That would have been the 89 era. Let's see.
I think Atmospherics came a little later, but I could be wrong. It also was repackaged like 2 or 3 times later by Avatar. They repackaged it in like a hardback. So I did one new cover, then I did another new cover, and I did some stuff for the interiors, and then I colored the black and white artwork so it would be able to be colored.
I'm looking at it, and I think it might have been. I'm not sure if it was in Caliber Presents unless they repackaged it the second time afterwards. Because I'm looking at Comic Vine website for all the listings. It's kind of a weird thing. Let's see. They had so many people in that book, though. Caliber Presents and Negative Burn both.
Yeah, Negative Burn was great. I did so many little things for that. I was actually trying to look it up too because I was trying to see if it would say actually where it appeared first, but I don't want to take too much time trying to find that stuff. But I did. There were a couple Kilroy stories that appeared in Negative Burn first before it became its own comic, and then there were other things like I did some autobiographical comics that appeared in there, and some dream stories that appeared in there. And then later on, way later, actually, Joe wrote a story called Rain that I did. This was probably only about maybe 7-8 years ago, I think.
Negative Burn had another run in 2016.
Yeah. So yeah, and I keep hoping to hear from Joe. Oh, Kilroy's finally going to be a movie, so you're going to get some of that movie money.
Well, that would be interesting because I can't remember which ones with Scout and which ones with Aftershock. I always get them confused. But he was telling me that they were looking into expanding off of Scout into the film stuff. So maybe you can pull it out finally. That
would be nice. Oh, I'm looking online. I I see I did one cover for Caliber Presents. It's basically this elf, or not elf, sprite kind of girl catching this light that's falling from above. That's my daughter when she was younger, and I think that's a collection of Caliber Presents. So I was trying to sort of see if I could see. Maybe it wasn't Caliber Presents. Maybe that was a different Caliber title that I'm thinking of that Atmospherics appeared in.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember what it was.
Well, let's see. I'm trying to see. Here we go. Let's see. You got Negative Burn, 9 appearances. Red Diaries, 3 appearances. Kilroy is here. Was repackaged as 3 issues. Raven Chronicles.
Yeah, I did some covers for that.
Here's the Caliber. Yeah, Caliber Presents #1 from July 2016. Let me see it. And what he's talking about, let me see if I can share it real quick.
Yeah, that's the cover I was talking about. Yeah.
So there's the Caliber Presents #1 that he did the cover on. And
yeah, I remember posing my daughter for that picture, for that painting.
What kind of painting is this made from?
It's watercolor.
It's watercolor? Okay.
I mean, lately, over the last, I'd say 6-7 years, I've been using acrylic inks a lot, but I still use watercolor too. But up until a certain period, it was almost all watercolor as far as paintings go anyway. Every once in a while, you mix media, but mostly watercolor.
Okay. Now, after Caliber, whoops, cancel that out. Well, no, yeah, okay. You got really big into Magic the Gathering.
Well, I got pretty lucky. What happened was I'd done some work for a different company called Mayfair Games. They had a book called Lycanthropes. It was a role-playing game about werewolves and stuff. And the art director on that.
You mean White Wolf? No. White Wolf is Werewolf the Apocalypse. My bad.
Yeah. White Wolf. I've done hundreds and hundreds of paintings for them over the years. But this woman, Maria Carbado, worked there, I think, and then she went over to Wizards for a while. And so she referred me to Jesper Meerfors, who was one of the art directors, and he hired me for most of the earlier cards that I did. Yeah, I was really lucky to. I mean, I would have been even luckier if I would have maybe lived in Seattle or something, because most of their early artists were artists who lived there in Seattle and so they could depend on getting work quick from them. You could just drive over with it. That would have been great, because I probably would own several houses by now if I had done. Those guys that worked at the very beginning and were smart with their money did really well, because someone like maybe like Doug Schuler or Jesper himself or a couple of the other artists who were there in the beginning and did a ton of cards when they were still paying royalties. So when you first started there, you would get a certain amount of money in cash. I think it was like $125, and then another $125 as stock in the company, and then you got royalties also.
Okay.
So as the company got bigger and bigger, those things really paid off for some people. People who had done a lot of cards and were receiving a ton of royalties, they could, buy a house. I only did maybe 15 cards, so I didn't have, quite the presence that they did. But it's still paying off to this day. Obviously, most of the work that I do now is related to those cards I did, was it 30 years ago, something like that?
Well, not quite 30 years ago. I mean, it was let's see, Magic the Gathering was...
Well, artwork I did was around 1993, 94.
That sounds about right. Yeah, because the cards started coming out in late '94, early '95, I think.
Yeah, yeah. Well, so yeah, actually mine probably would have been more like 94, 95. That's right, because the 92 and 93, that was more when I started at White Wolf and doing a lot of stuff for them.
Okay. Yeah, I remember you working at White Wolf because
Yeah.
I had a gaming group that was into Vampire the Masquerade and stuff. So
Yeah, man, I did so much stuff for them over the years, and I still do work. Right now, it's a company called Onyx Path who's taken over some of those properties and are publishing those things. There's also a company in England that's doing the same thing. I think what they're doing is they're doing the card game version. Onyx Path is doing books.
okay.
I'm doing work for both of those companies still, but Richard Thomas was the main art director then, and man, I just, like I say, hundreds of paintings and drawings and stuff over the years.
Yeah. What got you into this, though? I mean, what made you decide to get into this field?
Well, when I was young, I was a huge comics fan. I mean, I still read comics, but mainly it's creators that I already know I like. If something, some collection comes out or something, I don't go to the store every Tuesday like I used to. But I learned to draw by tracing from comics. I mean, I remember sitting at the kitchen table in my grandmother's house, and I'm using carbon paper and I'm tracing comics as like probably a 7-year-old. And then as time went on, I would, look at the comic on one side. There's my hand, and then, draw it next to the comic.
Right.
And then I got to the point where I was making up my own stuff. This would have been like in the maybe late high school, early college, which would be like mid 70s.
Okay.
And so I knew I was going to continue to be an artist, was all I wanted to do. And all my life it's been, I had like a day job that was some kind of art related job, and then freelance after work. And the freelance was usually stuff like White Wolf, Wizards, comics, and stuff like that. So that's pretty much how I got into artwork.
So basically, you worked as a commercial design artist in your day job.
Yeah, it's been different things. I had a couple jobs in various art agencies doing the stuff you would do in an art agency, ad agencies, I mean. And then at one point I started working for some government contract companies.
Okay.
So one of those actually had sites all over the place. And I was working, I can't remember, I think I was working in Tucson, Arizona first for one of these companies. And then I was in Las Vegas working for one of them. And a job opened up for a site out in the middle of nowhere in the Nevada desert, working on the stealth fighter. And that was pretty good for a time, but you can only do it for so long. It's really hard to be away from home all week, and then you get home like on Friday and you got to do everything all at once. And of course, it helps if you're single when you're doing that sort of thing, which I was. So it was a lot of government contract jobs in a row, and then it was another couple of like educational technology companies, and then I worked for Sony for 2 years on this online game called EverQuest that was pretty popular for a while.
I remember that.
Yeah. The first year was great, and the second year was hell. And then I got let go on my birthday in 2000.
Oh, that's lovely.
Yeah, 2002. I don't know if they planned it or they just didn't know, and it was just some amazing coincidence. But it was just a case of having an art director who was a jerk, and the company at that time, like a lot of these companies, they would bid out this job. Okay, we're going to get it done in this amount of time, and then they realized, oh, holy crap, there's no way we can get this done in this amount of time. So we're just going to have our people work all day, every day to get it done on time. So there was a period of about 4 months and this was around about 9/11. Actually, there was a period of about 4 months where we worked. Let's see, time and a half every day of the week, full time Saturdays, half time Sundays for like a 4 month period. And at that time, my two daughters were pretty young, like about 2 and 6. So that was kind of difficult on everybody.
Yeah.
And then I think the company decided, okay, we can't have all these guys doing very specific single jobs. We've got to have more. We got to have more people who can do all of the jobs. And that's why I think they let me go, because I was specialized and I was hired as a specific kind of artist, texture artist. And then when they wanted people who could do all kinds of stuff, I think they got rid of a lot of the people who could only do a certain job.
Yeah, that sort of makes sense, I guess. But
yeah, I'm still bitter. Can you tell? I'm still bitter.
Yeah.
Those jerks.
Yeah.
Well, the crappy part too is one good thing about that company is, in addition to your regular paycheck, as the games were sold, you would get a certain amount of royalty on, right. So you get a bonus check. And so that period of time that I worked,
were you contracted or were you exclusive?
No, we were actually employees, but you also got that bonus check.
Right. Well, that also means that you got healthcare benefits. That means you also get other kinds of benefits that most freelancers don't get, and that's where they really screwed you.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and that definitely became a problem too after that, because that was the last real art-related full-time job that I had. After that point, I went just freelance, and I had a few like crappy jobs along the way when I needed to have just more stable money coming in.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's one of the big problems with the video game. I have quite a few people who work video games, whether they're working graphic designs or artwork, or they're doing the game testing,
right,
or writing whatever it is. I don't know how they write video games. To me, it isn't. It's not a platform my brain engages for some reason. I don't know why, but yeah, I've had quite a few people who work for Crystal Dynamics and a few other companies like that out in California.
Yeah, they're very mercenary. I guess they have to be, but it's not an industry for family people or older people, because you have to be able to work, at least in my experience, in my limited experience, you have to be able to work a lot of hours.
Yeah. So we've covered quite a bit of stuff. Now, part of the reason he came to my rescue basically this week. Like I said, my original guest kind of had to bail out at the last second. And I've been wanting to talk about fanzines, because I have talked about fanzines on the show before, but it's been a long time. And, a lot of people don't really explore that side of the industry.
It's a very, I think, age-oriented thing too, because, people of my age, and you're younger than me, but of a certain age, when those were even in existence, because a lot of people, they don't even know what that word means, right. Unless like some music fanzine it's some band related fanzine or something that they might have seen at a show or something. But yeah, you have to be a certain age even to have experienced that.
Yeah. Well, I'm 49, so I'm kind of, I don't know if I'm in the tail end of that era.
Yeah, you are. Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, before I was doing the stuff at Central, I joined an APA group, an APA zine. That's how I met John Dennis, was through the APA zine, Super Team Amateur Press Alliance. And so that was kind of like my first, I wouldn't say it was my first exposure, but it was the first time I saw that type of a zine before.
Mm-hmm.
Where you had like 20 or 30 people all collected in one book.
Yeah, yeah.
And that was what kind of that, and that was fun, and I was doing my thing, but it wasn't getting me what I wanted, what I needed, because I wanted to be a professional, and that really isn't a professional thing. That's fan.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, I got to figure out how to get this to the next level. And that's when I started going to, that's why I said, okay, we got to do this at the college and put it together. But
and I've seen some other fanzines like that, come out of college art departments and stuff. In fact, I just reviewed one, I don't know, like 6-7 months ago out of, I don't know if it was RISD. No, it wasn't RISD. It was a Canadian art college that had a couple issues of a fanzine from their artists, and a couple of them went on to do comics later.
Almost like Byrne did back in the 70s.
Oh, who?
John Byrne.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, that whole group of guys came out of a specific fanzine and a specific group. They live in Chicago. I can't remember, but yeah, John Byrne, Roger Stern, Duffy Voland.
Yeah, you were thinking that they were all part of contemporary pictorial literature.
Yeah, CPL, one of the best fans.
I'm talking about ACA Comics that he did while he was in Alberta College.
Oh, I see. Okay, got it. Okay. Yeah, I hadn't seen that stuff. I know he had didn't he do like a strip in the local newspaper there, the college newspaper or something?
That was the thing that they did, was this ACA Comics #1, the satirical adventures of gay guy.
Right. I think I saw a little snippet of that somewhere.
Yeah. I wouldn't know that, but I am a former third-degree burn victim.
What do you mean? What do you mean? What does that mean?
Burn victim is burn fan.
Oh, okay, got it.
Third degree is the guy that have everything that the guy did in his career.
Yeah, I loved him back then, man. He was definitely an influence, and even the fanzine stuff before he became a pro, because I was seeing his stuff in CPL, and he also did stuff in other fanzines too. So I knew of him before he became a pro too. Right,
because he was, I'd say from 70 to 73, he was doing fanzines.
Yeah, he was pretty active. He had stuff in a lot of. In fact, I have an issue of The Collector, and his main illustrations were just a bunch of big full-page illustrations of spaceships. Not even any typical Byrne figures, just spaceships, like the Enterprise and some other stuff.
He was a big Star Trek fan back then.
Oh yeah, yeah. There's in fact, that issue of The Collector has a lot of Star Trek stuff in it, and I know there's some other John Byrne related Star Trek stuff in there.
Yeah, but you have you do a regular monthly review or of fanzines now, or?
Yeah, I don't know if you'd call it a blog or what, but I just call it a column. It's an online column called Ink Stains that I do once a month. It always posts on the first of each month at 6 a.m. And I just basically randomly to some degree choose a fanzine, and I scan it and I do a little review and a little informational bit on the column, and I try to get some of the original players involved when I can. Obviously, you can't always do that because they're impossible to find, or they're dead, which makes it even harder to find. But
well, you might be able to find them where they're buried, but that doesn't do a whole lot of good.
Yeah. So, and I've been able to do that several times, but not all the time. So I do an informational, and I do sort of review, and I show various images from the fanzine, and 99% of the time I have a PDF available of the whole thing, so someone can see the whole thing, because they're either really impossible to find, or they're very expensive if you can find them.
Okay, so, what site is that at?
Huh?
Where do you have that at, that blog?
It's on this site called Comic Attack, but there's also, the easiest thing to do is just to go to my site, which is KenMeyerJr.com, and there's in the pull down menu there's a thing that says Ink Stains, and that'll show all the columns that are available. There's like 150 so far installments, so there's an awful lot to see. And like I was telling you earlier, I just finished working on this one.
Here we go. Here's the actual page where you.
Yeah.
So you can see he's talking about the collector number 27 as Don Newton, Edgar Rice Burroughs, Greg Morrow, Jack Kirby, John Byrne, and Steve Ditko. Squatron number 2 has L. Williamson, Bernie Wrightson, Frank Frazetta. This is, really the classic 60s and 70s, your top guys.
Yeah, I mean, it's a historical, there's a historical aspect to it, because obviously a ton of these people started in one kind of fandom or another, so you can see their work before they became professionals, and sometimes you can even see some of the characters that they might have created themselves before they ended up being published by whatever company they worked for. And there's a lot of like fantasy artists, and there's a few where I've been able to do interviews. I have a Craig Russell interview there, for example. Yeah, I mean, and it's personal for me because I grew up with these things. Back then, getting the mail was a huge deal. You can only get this stuff through the mail. There's no internet. And they're small print runs. So
considered rare to begin with. Yeah.
Yeah, to begin with, and they just become more and more rare over the years. So it's really cool if you like the idea of seeing a lot of your favorite artists before they were well known.
Yeah, I see. When I moved out west from Michigan to Nevada, I lost a big part of my collection. We had a truck break down, and either something got left behind, or the people who were helping us, change from truck to truck, stole some of my collection, one or the other.
I have an even worse story. This happened twice actually. I was collecting comics from when I was a kid, from about probably I would say 67 or so is when I started. Okay. So I had a lot of stuff, and the first time this happened, basically my mom was getting tired of us, my brother and I, leaving our comics laying around all the time, so she burned a bunch of them.
Oh.
So that's a pretty classic story that a lot of people go through. And then also later, when I was in college, probably about 1976 or so, I had a bunch of boxes in the corner of comics and stuff. And for some stupid reason, on top of those boxes, I was doing like a candle sculpture thing at one time. And I happened to leave the room for a few minutes. And then I see all these guys running around, and the fire alarms going off. This is in the college dorm, by the way. And so they're running because now they get a chance to use the fire extinguishers. So they run in there and they're spraying this crap everywhere. And so all those boxes in the corner were ruined by either water damage or fire.
Pop Culture Avenger says, I have several issues of Squatron and Wits End. They're getting quite scarce.
Yeah, and in fact, I wanted to profile Squatron a lot more, but I think his name is Pearson, the guy who does that now, and he's sort of still doing it. So I think he wants to keep that stuff still sort of rare and not able to be seen, so he can maybe collect it at some time. So there have been a few times like that where I've run into obstacles and I couldn't show a PDF or whatever. Like David Spurlock, the guy who sort of manages Jim Steranko, was pretty watchful over that. So I had a Steranko portfolio up there for a while and the PDF available, but then he squashed that and I could only show a few images. But in general, I can show the whole thing and have a PDF because the people either don't care or they're not around anymore. So there's no problem doing that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's kind of crazy. I mean, these days, technically, as long as you're not monetizing it, people shouldn't complain.
Well, that's my philosophy, yeah. In some cases,
you're monetizing it and stuff, but then see what happens is you might not monetize it, but then someone takes the PDF and got it from you,
right,
turns it around and does it, then they blame you for it because you're the source.
Well, one thing I stopped doing is I stopped having the PDFs be any kind of high resolution. Now they're just basically 72 DPI, so you can't really do that much with the PDFs now of this stuff. The quality would just be too crappy.
Well, hey, that's the way they had to answer that, like you say. but it's well enough that you can read it if you need to, you know. And
What? What'd you say?
It's high enough grade that you can read it.
Yeah. Well, yeah. On the screen, it's no problem. You can read everything and see everything really clear on the screen. So, so yeah, that works out really good. So yeah, I've been doing that. I guess I've been doing that column for like 10 years, a lot longer than I thought. Initially, I was going to do like one a week, and I figured out, no, there's no way I can do that. So then I decided one a month is enough, because, you know, you have a life you have to lead. So every month I do it. Some people have helped by sending me scans of stuff I can't find myself. There are a couple of people that have helped me with that several times. But probably 90% of the time, it's stuff that I have myself or that I had at one point. And actually, the first artwork I ever had published, well, technically it wasn't a fanzine. It was a program book from a comic convention that's no longer around. But it was an illustration of Bruce Lee that was inked by Brent Anderson, who I've been corresponding with before he became a professional. Right before he became a professional, he was still doing fanzine work in this fanzine called Venture that him and a couple other of his fellow artists used to put out. And he told me, you know, don't go ape shit, but I think I can get this published if I ink it for you. And it was published in the Baycon, which was a San Francisco convention that's no longer around. And yeah, Pop Culture Avenger says the Comics Buyer's Guide. That was an awesome publication. I tried so many times to get on the cover of that damn thing, and I was never able to. But yeah, I in fact, let's see if I can move this. I don't know if you'll be able to see it. Well, you can sort of see it. So way back in the background, back there, that's the cover for the Buyer's Guide number 8, the original art. Which is by this guy named Dennis Fujitaki.
Yes, Dalgona.
Yeah, really love his stuff.
Yeah,
I ended up getting that in a trade for some of my art, which I was really happy for, because that was the first issue of the Buyer's Guide that I ever had. I was in high school, and one of the librarians there knew that I was into comics and stuff, and she said, "Oh, there's this newspaper you might like," and she gave me a copy, and then I wrote Alan Light, the guy who was publishing the Buyer's Guide, and told him I was really interested in this stuff, and he just sent me free like 3 or 4 fanzines. So that's what really got me into it. It was great. I mean, I'm always indebted to Alan for sending me. I think it was like an issue of The Collector and a fanzine that Alan did himself, and maybe 1 or 2 others. So that was great.
Well, I kind of, like I said, I got into the fanzine scene from the APA, STAPA group originally, and then the college. When I started doing what we were doing with the group, and we did our little anthology, and we did our own individual. Some of us did ash cans, some of us did actual 8.5 by 11 printed books. None of us did comics as comics, though. It was always some off sides. The comic shop was like, I can't carry that. That's like, what? That's the wrong size. I can't show that. Oh, you can't, can you? No, I can't show that. Okay. All right, Sparky, go right next door to the music shop. Explain how much of an idiot the comic book retailer is. And you're selling 200 copies of it next door in the music store, and it's like, why? But yeah, we did that, and what happens is that we go to the conventions or we go to other colleges, and everybody just want to trade with you.
Yeah, I wish I would have been in a scene like that. I was never in a city that had conventions, like I said, and I didn't really have any other comics fans as friends. So it was all what I found out through the mail, like from that first Buyer's Guide.
Yeah, you went through the want ads in the back.
Yeah, and I put some in there myself to sell stuff and to.
I think I remember seeing some in the '90s from you. I used to get Comic Buyer's Guide.
Yeah.
I never kept them.
I wish I would have, because I would like to. I mean, Russ Mahiras.
I kept them for a while, but.
Yeah, he has a really good group of covers that he's scanned over the years,
Mhm.
that he has in a little collection. Uh, but there are so many great covers, and covers by, and there are some crappy covers too. But the they he was using a lot of fan art, and every once in a while he get like Dan Adkins or someone to do a professional cover for him. But uh, that was one of the obviously one of the biggest publications that Fandom's ever had.
Yeah, well, I didn't get into it until after Maggie and her husband were running it.
Right. And they did a good job too, but it became,
It
to
was
me,
more.
it became
It was
more of
more
a general industry thing rather than a
yes, it was more
comic.
of it was more of an industry news magazine at that point. Um, I was in the letter call a few times, ticked off some editors.
Yeah, I for a while I was getting a lot of letters published in comics. I was like, when I was in high school and stuff, that was like one of my major missions was to keep getting letters published in comics and stuff. And I even remember some of the names of some of the other letter writers, like Guy H. Lillian III was someone who like keep getting letters published all the time, and I was always trying my best to get stuff published.
Or TM Maple.
Yeah, TM Maple. Yep, that's another one. Yeah. Um, I could probably remember some others if I tried really hard, but my brain is just not in working order anymore.
That's fine. But yeah, that's so that's where you come was through that introduction to the comic buyer's guide.
Yeah.
And that's kind of a
And I kept getting a lot of stuff published in fanzines. That then became a big deal to me, was trying to get stuff published in a lot of fanzines. And so I ended up doing a lot of fanzine work in the probably from like 77 through 81 or 82. No Sex was one of the great fanzines that I did a lot of stuff for example. I really wanted to get in the Comics Journal early on, but I wasn't good enough. So, but I kept trying.
Pop Culture Avenger asks, did you collect Star Trek fanzines as well? In a Different Reality, Stardate Unknown?
No, I didn't really do that. I guess, I mean, I loved Star Trek, the original series, but I think I might have just not been aware that there was a Star Trek fandom out there in fanzines. Strangely enough, though, I remember taking part in the Kate Bush fanzine, musician. She had really rabid fan base, and I did some artwork for a couple issues of this fanzine called Homegrown, I think, or Homeground. I can't remember, one of those two. So, but it was mainly comic fanzines that I was trying to get in and that I bought.
Yeah, I was more. I don't know how do I put this. In the 80s, I did some editing for my friends that were doing their own mini comics.
Right.
And so this is the Turtles time. This is 85, 86. Yeah. So this is Turtles. This is that whole black and white boom and bust period. And so everybody would bring stuff from the stores to the school, and we'd all be looking at these underground comics.
Yeah. Oh, undergrounds were huge for me too.
And
also because you're younger and you can't see that stuff anywhere, and it's a big deal to see these two people having sex in this comic. It's crazy to see that.
We did. My guys didn't bring that, but they. I mean, what the heck? We're all 6th, 7th graders. I don't think we were getting those. I don't think we were getting the Outlaw books yet.
Right.
Like my friend Tim Jones III, he did a book called Saint Justice, and it was about his uncle, who was an actual priest who had to deal with alcoholism. And in his story, the rapture comes, and they make him the vessel of God's judgment or wrath or whatever, and he has to overcome the alcoholism to pass judgment on others.
Yeah, that's a really cool topic. I mean, you don't see that kind of stuff
especially from a 13-year-old.
Yeah, you're right. And I mean, that's one cool thing about the autobiographical boom that started, I guess, in the 90s.
Yeah.
That became really interesting for me too. For that.
But he was doing that to try and it was kind of like his way of supporting his uncle, who was, like I said, he was going through rehab for alcoholism at the time. And, you know, that was kind of like one of the first things I did. And then I moved from Illinois at the time to Michigan, where there was nobody, like you say, you know, just like.
I lived in Michigan too.
Yeah. Well, where I lived, like, really rural. I mean, there's the base kids and then there's farm kids.
Yeah.
And my father was retired military, so he didn't live on base. And because we were military, we didn't fit in with the farm kids. So I was just like ostracized.
The only memory I have of Michigan is at one point, and we must have been close to the lake. At one point, I had this big, dirty clothes basket full of hermit crabs, and I brought them home, and I had them in the house, and somehow they got tipped over, and no one realized it. And so for a while, there were all these hermit crabs in all these various places of the house.
Oh, jeez. Well, that could be anywhere in Michigan except the center, because there's lakes everywhere. Pop Culture Video says fanzines were a way of fans communicating like YouTube is today with streams. In a way, yeah.
Just a lot slower.
Yeah, a lot slower, but then again, it was a lot because we had to take the time to print stuff out and put it together and compile it and ship it out, you know, mail it out.
Yeah, it was a lot more meaningful for that reason.
Well, not only was it a lot more meaningful, I think people were a lot more thoughtful in what they presented. Whereas everything today is just like immediate reactive.
More throwaway culture kind of thing.
Yeah, whatever's going on is an immediate gut reaction to stuff. And a lot of times it's just like, no, you should have just chill. You didn't need to respond to that. You didn't need to go off on a tangent there type thing. Like, okay, I think I told you about this. Today, the big news was that Marvel has left Diamond.
Right.
To go to
Penguin
Random House.
Yeah.
And, you know, everybody's like, the sky is falling. What are comic retailers going to do? And I'm thinking, you know, before we had the Diamond Monopoly, we had 30 retailers that did comics, and we all used multiple ones.
Right.
And all these other publishers have been using Penguin and Random House to do their graphic novels through bookstores and libraries and other venues besides comics already. That's including DC, Dark Horse, IDW, Boom, Oni, Archie, you know, pretty much everybody already. So it's not this is not something that they're not ready for as far as just a distributor. They know how to handle this. They've been handling it in that. So if they're going to just handle it towards and say, okay, comic shops, you can buy it from us too, I don't think that they're going to have a problem. I don't think that's an issue. So why is everybody reacting like this?
Plus, I read that article that you showed me, or at least I read it to some degree, and it looks like there are a couple details that are even better than it used to be for retailers. Something having to do with some monetary aspect or something that's better.
Yeah, they might have to pay the shipping and handling from Penguin.
Right.
That's a big deal. That's a huge deal, because when you're paying shipping and handling, and then you have to return stuff if something is damaged.
Right.
And then people don't really understand this, the fans don't understand this, is that even though we, the publishers, give 60 to 65% discount to Diamond, the retailers only get 47 to 55%.
Mm-hmm.
And that's sort of what helped figure out who was getting more support, because obviously you're going to go with the companies that get the more discount value, which means you can order more copies to get to that level of discount as well.
Uh-huh.
They're giving you a straight 50 across, 50% off, no matter what publisher it is. There's there's probably a minimum, but it's not like minimum of Marvel, minimum of DC, minimum of Dark Horse, minimum of, you know, per publisher. It's going to be a straightforward across. Even if Diamond does have Marvel doing the singles that way.
Uh-huh.
And I just look at it as, well, if Marvel does singles that way as well as their trades, then everybody will do the same eventually. You know, but what I don't understand is like why the mentality of the retailers of I only want to do business with one person. Yes, it's convenient, but in every other retail business in the world, you use multiple distribution channels.
Right.
So why do comic retailers have this attitude that they don't have to do that?
I guess they just gotten used to it, and anything you get used to seems easy, and anything new seems difficult. So maybe that's all it is.
Yeah. What do you think will happen to Diamond now after losing the bid too? The thing is, Steve Jeppy had been trying to sell this company for years. He retired 4 or 6 years ago, and he had to come out of retirement when the new regime screwed everything up to try and get everything back on track. And he's 71 years old, and he's got plenty of money. He's filthy rich. He doesn't really need to have Diamond open anymore. So in that respect, I don't see where Diamond's going to be around too much longer unless somebody takes it over and treats it for the rest of the comics market. And what people don't understand is that Diamond doesn't represent but like 8% of comics, the entirety of the catalog. 92% of us are either digital exclusive or we're underground, like fanzine, direct from the person who's making the thing to the reader through the mail, or we're print on demand,
right?
Like IndiePlanet.com or Lulu.com, or we're crowdfunded.
I didn't realize that the percentage was that small.
Most people don't because most comic shops only carry that stuff and they act like this is the comics market.
Right.
It's really not.
Right.
And it's so much larger now. And, I tell retailers this, and it's like, well, I give them all this stuff I want, literally arm's length worth of lists of titles. And they're like, I don't know where to get this.
Right. Because they're too used to dealing with just one source.
Exactly. And, it's like, that's why you're failing as a business. It's not because, oh my gosh, Marvel and DC are hiring social justice warrior creators and they're minorities and we don't like what they did with the character.
Right.
Because I mean, did you like it, X-Men, when Cyclops abandoned his wife and son to go be with his ex-girlfriend that they brought back from the dead?
I think that was after I stopped reading X-Men.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. Yeah, I mean, there's been stupid storylines throughout our course of history.
Right.
For any reason that you could have left. It's not because, oh my gosh, they hired a bunch of black writers that the comics.
Right.
But to hear fans today talk online, you see that kind of mentality, and I just don't.
Now, unfortunately, seeing people talk online is about the worst way to judge anything nowadays, because you're only going to see the most vocal, opinionated people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Capital City. I am surprised that Milton Grieb hasn't tried to rebuild Capital in more.
Didn't Capital weren't they the ones that distributed First Comics, or even maybe the ones that started First Comics?
Yes.
Yeah, that was a great line. I love that company.
Yeah, Milton, who was running Capital, does ICV2.com now. Okay. And that's comics industry and role-playing game industry news site.
Okay.
Again, he's not a spring chicken, and I think it's just the people who have the history and know what needs to be done are probably a little bit long in the tooth to be doing it.
Yeah.
And the younger generation doesn't want to listen to them.
Right.
And I think that's where we're having the problem more than anything else. But yes, Capital City, Friendly Franks was a great distributor out of Chicago. Well, they were actually of Indiana, but nearby Chicago area. Let's see. They had Comics Hawaii. They had Andromeda out of Canada. Last Gasp. There was so many different distributors in in the
Yeah,
80s.
I actually have something coming up in a Last Gasp book. The guy, it's not John Moore. I'll think of his name. But anyway, the guy that does a lot of the like comic book artist and some of those trade magazines that are really well done. Um, he did something with the Last Gasp, and they have a new book coming out with a bunch of new stuff, like a history, a combination with new stuff. And I did a portrait of him with like space helmet and water, getting ready to fill up his helmet and stuff. And that's going to be in that. So that's kind of a big deal for me because, like I said, undergrounds were a huge deal for me long ago. So it's great to be a part of that in any way.
The comic book artists are
John Cook is the guy's name.
Oh, John B. Cook. Okay.
Yeah. Another guy who's done a whole lot of really good stuff for the comic book industry.
Yes, he has. Not just him, but all the guys who do Tomorrows.
Yeah. Those guys together, man. Such a great line of books and a history of line of books. It's another company that I wouldn't mind owning everything that they've done.
Yeah, well, they do a lot of guard work. I mean, I can't remember the guy's name, the one who's in charge of it, but he's usually there near one of the shows I do regularly because he's in North Carolina, I'm in South Carolina, so usually when I go to Charlotte, he's there.
Mm-hmm.
And we're always talking about, you gotta go interview Jan Sternad for Dalgota.
Yeah, I've talked a lot to him because of his old fanzine, and now I can't remember the title, but it starts with an A. And
Albedo?
Huh?
Was it Albedo?
No. I'll think of it at some point. But I've talked to him a fair amount on Facebook.
Right.
And some of it's even related to Dennis Fujitaki, who I've talked to through email and on Facebook. But he's not really the most social media oriented guy.
No.
He was actually pretty hard to track down. Some of my ink stains stuff that I wanted to include in.
Anomaly.
There you go. Yeah. Yeah, that was a great fanzine. A lot of Robert Klein, he's one of my favorite fan artists from that time, and I interviewed him. I went to his house. He was really nice. I went to his house, did a sit down taped interview with him, and he walked me around, showed me all kinds of stuff, gave me a bunch of free things, and he was one of those guys that I really loved back then. Then later. A guy who did a more modern comic sort of fanzine was nice enough to go through and now I'm forgetting the word for transcribe it. He transcribed that interview for me and he published it in his fanzine, and now I have it and I was able to add it to ink stains.
Awesome. Well, you've got a stack of fanzines with you.
Yeah. In fact, let me turn on the overhead light because the light outside is starting to go away. But like this is the one that I just did. So this is one called Heritage. It was one of the. So it was basically what's called a prozine, which is just a very high quality fanzine and just incredible. This is a Flash Gordon centered issue, and it's got artwork by some of the best artists at that time. I mean, Gray Morrow's in it, Reed Crandall, Jeff Jones, Mike Kaluta, Frank Frazetta. It's just incredible, and that's going to be in the next ink stains. But I have a box. So in addition to some of the like really high quality zines, I've got stuff like this, which is.
Does that Heritage book have any Austin Briggs in it?
Pretty crappy. No, it does not. No.
Okay.
A lot of these sort of half-size fanzines.
Yeah.
I've gone through and I've covered a bunch of them, but there's a bunch I still haven't covered for whatever reason. Sometimes I don't I haven't covered some of them because they're more prose oriented, so they might have tons of stories and some illustrations, and it just doesn't, it's hard to justify spending the time scanning like a 70-page fanzine when it's mostly stories. Maybe because I'm an artist and I'm a more visual person, but like here's Promethean Enterprise.
It's not just that you're just visual. I think you, like a lot of people, you know, we're in a very impatient media world today.
Right, right.
So reading for reading's sake, and
reading period. Yeah,
yeah. You know, is some, I won't call it an anathema, but you know, it can be a little bit daunting for some people.
Right. Yeah. Well, like here, in fact, here's Bacon. This is the thing I was talking about, which is a convention book that had my first published art in it. So, and I've got a big stack of stuff here, a whole bunch of Rockets Blast comic collectors, RBCC. So I've got a stack of stuff here that I haven't covered yet. Most of the ones, like the first group of that comprised maybe the first 75 columns, someone I know bought a bunch of those in one big buy because he had a friend that really wanted to have them. So I'm sad I don't have those anymore, but I still have a lot here that I haven't gotten around to.
Yeah. Do you read Comic Effect magazine from Jim Kingman?
No, I don't know of that. No.
Okay. Let's see. It was published by, I'm trying to think there, St. Paloma Street Publications out of Pasadena, California.
Uh-huh. Is this an old fanzine you're talking about, or?
Yeah. This is
no, I haven't seen that.
Yeah, well, this is from '99. This is spring of '99.
Oh, okay, okay.
And it's got an article of mine in it where I review.
Oh, okay. That's why you have it. Yeah, yeah, okay.
Yeah. I review Evan Dorkin's Hectic Planet.
Oh, Evan Dorkin's a superstar for Milk and Cheese alone, as far as I'm concerned.
Yep. But I happen to really dig the Hectic Planet stuff. Pirate Corps was originally what it was called, but they changed it.
Yeah, I have some of those somewhere.
Yeah, but I got some of that stuff. I've got like early Rob Liefeld fanzines like She.
Oh, you know, one thing that I have is there's a guy named Gary Carlson who does this comic called Megaton. You know Gary, and he had a lot of people in there before they became well known. I mean, Eric Larson, Rob Liefeld, Angel Medina, a lot of people did stuff for him before they became famous. And I think I have a little like it was basically a newsprint quality insert that talked about some upcoming characters that Gary was going to publish. One of them was Youngblood by Liefeld,
right?
And one of them was a character of mine called Farrell, and then there was like Eric Larson character and stuff like that. So Gary's another one of those guys who's done a big service for comics in general by publishing a lot of these people when they were young and still learning.
Yeah. That's why I kind of look at fans today. You know, they're like, Marvel says, here's our Stormbreakers, our brand new, you know, this is the hot artist. I'm like, no, those guys have been around for 12 to 15 years. Those are hot new talents. Those are guys that I was helping out when they were nobody. Sorry.
yeah, you're right. I mean, like you mentioned, Brian Bendis earlier, I think. I remember him when he was just doing Caliber stuff and just doing when he was actually known as an artist.
Right, he was doing both the writing and the art. He was doing his noir books.
Yeah, and I did a couple covers for him, and I actually used him as a model for a character in this graphic novel I did called Gustav P.I. for MBM many years ago, when he still had hair.
Shh! Don't let people know he had hair.
Yeah, it's too bad I don't have like my photo file right here that I could just pull something out right away, because I could pull out a couple of those photographs that he sent me for that I use as reference for that artwork.
Captain Whizbang, I think, was the title of a fanzine.
Yeah, his name was Bill Joe White, I think, was the guy. He was big in fandom, but I think really early on, like early 60s. And I think it was more, well, some superhero, some science fiction stuff. But I actually reviewed a fanzine that a friend of mine, an online friend of mine, said I should really cover, because it has a lot of those very early people involved. I can't remember. I think it might have been called Graphic Showcase or Graphic something, but it had a lot of those early original, like early 60s fanzine people. Yeah. He said a Pop Culture Adventure says Captain Whizbang. I remember that too. Yeah.
But I'm trying to
Pop
find
Culture Avenger sounds like someone who has a house I should visit someday when he's not around.
You heard him. Be warned.
Don't give me your address, whatever you do.
But I'm trying to find something here. Well, I guess you are. Okay. All right. This is the old program guide from one of my first shows I was at.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I have a few of those from San Diego and a few other shows that I saved somewhere.
Well, that was my actual first show as a listed professional.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
So.
Yeah, well, at San Diego, I would try and get stuff in the program book every year. So there are a whole bunch of stuff over the years that I had in that thing.
Mm-hmm. You probably know who Timothy Corrigan is.
Oh yeah, Tim Corrigan. Yeah, I don't think I've ever met him or talked to him, but yeah, he was another one of those guys who was sort of like a mini mogul, where he had his own little stable of stuff. Yeah.
The Small Press Creative Explosion. That was his review.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I remember his style, very sort of Kirby-esque, somewhat of a naive style, I guess you could call it. But he was one of those guys who got a lot of stuff done, got a lot of work published.
And there's a lot of cool stuff in here that it's like I never got to find. I was like, I want to see these books, man.
Yeah. And there was probably a lot of that were advertised that never even happened, because fans.
These are books he actually reviewed, so they probably did exist. They probably do exist somewhere. I just, not necessarily the easiest thing to find.
Right.
But yeah, that's the stuff I'm always, when I go to a comic shop, that's what I'm looking for. I go in the back issues looking for that kind of stuff.
Well, that's what I usually look for when I go to a comic convention. There are very few vendors that have it, but sometimes you'll find a vendor who will have a bunch of fanzines, usually overpriced, but every once in a while you can find something that's worth getting.
And you're probably familiar with the Center for Cartoon Studies since you're out in California.
I've heard of that, and I haven't been able to look into it further or go. I just sort of know it exists just a little bit. So go ahead and talk about it.
Well, it's in Pasadena.
Oh, so that's pretty close. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's see. I'm trying to see if they've got a little thing here about it or not. I don't know. At least I think that's the one that was in the Pasadena one. Anyway, they got a little thing called "The World Is Made of Cheese," the Applied Cartooning Manifesto, and here's what we do: we find our voice, we deepen understanding, we discover new models, we build new networks, we educate, we reach new audiences.
Yeah, that sort of reminds me of some of the early Scott McCloud stuff that he was doing.
if we mistake the valuing of a cartoonist's worth only in terms of the commodities produced and the audiences built, then by this very narrow definition, most cartoonists are not worth very much. Which is true in a way.
I know that from experience.
I mean, after all, if we are only our value is only determined by how popular a book is or how much value one of our works are, then what have we actually given back to the society?
Right. Yeah, well, it's a case of, I guess the element of society you're talking about, because obviously you probably have reached a certain part of society, just not your general housewife who watches soap operas or something.
Yeah. Well, even if just because someone bought your book doesn't mean you reached them, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think what they're getting at is trying to actually give something of a, I guess I don't know, something that stays with us, I guess, for a good long time or most of our lives. I mean, certain artists affected us, and we saw more than just who we liked and who we gravitated towards. But those particular artists happen to have whatever it was, that little intangible element or whatever.
Yeah, it's hard to define most of the time what really appeals to you. I mean, Byrne wasn't necessarily the best comics artist around, but he had a style that was very appealing for a lot of different reasons.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm tired of going through these fanzines.
Trying to find something cool to show.
Yeah, I thought, for example, that No Sex fanzine that I mentioned before from this guy by the name of David Heath. He was an Air Force guy, a comics fan, mainly more of a science fiction fan, really. And he published this fanzine called No Sex because, he wanted it to be, I think the original title, he told me, was something like All Violence and No Sex. But it's a science fiction fanzine that he did partially to show his own work. But in addition to that, like a lot of the fanzine people in general, he would publish, new people, inexperienced people. And he was one of the first people that published Hernandez Brothers, for example, Raphael Kayanan, people like that. So that's how a ton of professional artists, like we mentioned, got their start, because someone was nice enough to let them get some sort of a public forum, even if it's a limited public forum like a fanzine, a learning experience to get out there and get other people to give you opinions on your work and everything.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm trying to think. Didn't he publish Brad Foster, early Brad Foster?
Who? David Heath?
Yeah.
It's possible. I mean, I know I've seen Brad Foster in a lot of fanzines in general. I just can't remember if No Sex was one of them, but it very, very well could have been. Yeah.
Yeah. I guess it depends on how early, because I think, I mean, I've never seen it, but I remember reading about it, and I think he was in the 4th or 6th issue
of No Sex.
Yeah.
Could be. I mean, I've had most of the issues, because I think I came into it around that time, maybe 3 or 4. I must have seen an ad somewhere for it, and I did a lot of corresponding with David way back then, and sent him a lot of work, and he published a lot of my stuff way back then in the late 70s, early 80s. I remember he came to visit one time. He was on a trip going somewhere. I think it was when I was living in Utah, and he used to be well known for riding this big Harley, this big noisy Harley, and he pulled up in his big noisy Harley, and I can't remember what we did, but he visited for a little while, and not too long ago, maybe about 6 months ago. I mean, he died a little while. He died years ago, but I I can't remember what I did for ink stains. I might have done like an issue of No Sex, and I found out somehow that he was buried in a specific cemetery nearby here, close enough that I could drive to. So I found it. I went there to the cemetery and I looked around, looked at the guides and stuff, and eventually found it and took a couple pictures of his grave site there with a couple issues of No Sex, next to it.
Pop Culture Avenger asks, do you have any Arkham sampler or Howard collector?
No, I don't know either of those. I knew of, I think, there was a Robert E. Howard fanzine called, what was it called?
I'm presuming the Howard collector is a Robert E. Howard fanzine.
Yeah, it's got to be. There was another Robert E. Howard fanzine, Amra, that's right. I have some issues of that. And then there was an Edgar Ross Burroughs one called Herbdom that I had an issue to it. But those things went on for a long time. They had many, many issues published. And I only had a few over the years.
Arkham sampler, that could be Batman or it could be Lovecraft.
Yeah, good point. I mean, I guess
sure which one is that for Avenger?
But Pop Culture Avenger, fill us in. Most of the fanzines I was really interested in were the comic related or some of the fantasy related ones, mainly because of the artists that were involved.
Yes. What, dude? Is it like Batman or is it?
Yes.
Cthulhu.
Maybe it's both.
It's both. Yes. It's Cthulhu.
I've often wanted to profile some of the undergrounds that I have, even though technically they're not fanzines, but they're low enough of print runs and rare enough that it would be a good thing to be able to see them.
Yeah.
August Derleth. That name sounds kind of familiar, but I don't know what it is.
Okay, August Derleth with those. Yeah, because I'm not familiar with it offhand. My fanzine stuff is really like from the 90s, a very specific late 80s, early 90s period for me.
You know AFTA?
I've heard of it.
Yeah, that's a crazy ass scene, I'll tell you. And the guy who did it was just as crazy. He was a really funny, interesting guy named Bill Dale Marcinko. He ended up dying in a fire. And the crazy thing is he faked his own death by fire before that. So he definitely had an interesting brain, I guess is a good way to put it. But he had AFTA was a pop culture fanzine. So it incorporated a lot of stuff, incorporated comics, music, movies, all kinds of stuff. But I did some work for that, and I'm going to profile one of those soon. A couple people have asked because it definitely has its place in fandom, and there are definitely people out there who remember it and remember him and want to see it. That issue I did a Steve Martin cover. That's, like I say, it covered all kinds of pop culture.
Well, if it's August, okay, August Derleth was
was he a literary agent or something?
Yeah, he's a literary writer and anthologist, and he's the guy who first published Lovecraft, apparently.
Oh, really? Oh, okay.
So that now we know that the Arkham thing he's talking about is the Cthulhu stuff, Lovecraftian stuff.
Okay, got it.
So, yeah, I've no idea about that stuff. I respect Lovecraft's work, but I've never been like diehard fan of
it. I've only read a few things. I actually did a painting of him for someone. No, actually, what I did, I can't remember what it was for, but I have this painting of this girl sitting in this real dark library, and on the wall behind her, there's a painting of Lovecraft.
There's a lot of people who just adore that stuff. So
now, Robert E. Howard, I was a huge Conan fan, and that was just as much probably for the Frazetta covers as anything. One of the jobs I had as a kid, I think I must have been like 14, was detasseling corn, I think in Minnesota. And I
Oh,
took all the money I made from that summer job and I went right to the bookstore and probably bought about 50 books that had Frazetta covers or Roy Krinkle covers, all the like the Ace double books and the Daw books and I can't remember what the label, the Lancer books that did the Conan ones. I don't know how I can remember that. My memory is so crazy. I can't remember someone's name that I talked to 2 minutes ago, but I can remember who published the Conan books from like 1970. It's nuts. The mind is a terrible thing to waste. Mine's really wasted.
Yeah, there are days you'd be surprised. There was a time where I could have told you verbatim every word of dialogue from X-Men #1 to 300. I could tell you the birthdays.
It's probably good that you don't know that now.
Yeah. It was like I could tell you the birthdays of everybody who worked on it. I could tell you when they were born, when they got into business, all that stuff. But that was because of a weird thing with me. A kid introduced me to X-Men when I was 13. And I had quit reading comics. I'm 12 years old, 13 years old. Comics, it's time to go to books now. It's time to grow up type thing.
Oh, right.
Yeah, and this kid was play acting scenes on the school bus. I'm like, I don't remember this X-Men comic. I have to find out what this is because this sounds interesting. And he introduced me to that. And then that was like in September of 85. And then for Christmas, my parents got me Phoenix Saga, God Loves Man Kills, and Days of Future Past. The 3 best stories of X-Men history, basically, all in one shebang.
Is the God Loves thing that the graphic novel that Brett Anderson drew?
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah, I remember that really well. Yeah. That was a really affecting story for comics from what I remember. And I liked it a lot because Brent did it too. So that was really cool to see.
A lot of people underrated him back then.
Yeah.
He didn't really get rated until Astro City.
Yeah, that's probably true. I actually have a Kazar page of his that he gave me long ago. I don't know why he gave it to me. I can't remember, but I have it in. It probably needs to be kept in a lot better archival position than I have it. But he was one of those people that I really looked up to early on because he was doing a fanzine that I really liked, and then he became a professional and did some stuff I really liked, and I was still talking to him, so it was a big deal for me to be talking.
Well, there's a whole lot of stuff to think about with the Daw, the Lancer, the Ace Doubleday books, just a whole bunch of stuff. I mean, not just.
Plus, even I remember it was a big deal getting those. Columbia, was it Columbia? No, that was a Columbia. That's Record House. But the book club. What's the book club where you
Science Fiction Book Club? Maybe,
yeah. And they did some hardbacks of the Edgar Rice Burroughs books with Frazetta covers. Yeah, I had those, and those were a really treasured thing to have. Anything with Frazetta was something I wanted to have.
Yeah, I didn't get into that group until like the late '90s, early 2000s. So they were like doing even more modern artists. A lot of Luis Royo, a lot of what's his name?
The Rangs Rock guy.
Elmore, maybe.
Huh? Larry Elmore.
Yeah, they had some Elmore covers on some stuff.
Yeah, he did some work for EverQuest. He was the box artist.
Yes.
For a while, he would come in and show sketches and stuff every once in a while. Oh, John Norris has to go. Too bad. You're gonna miss all the good stuff.
Yeah. No, he's got to call it a night. He's usually he's got to get up in the morning and do his thing.
We're going to start talking about John Norris behind his back now.
Not much to talk about.
That guy, he owes me money.
Actually, he kind of does. Not much, but he does. I got a poster for him that from a book I did recently, actually from Mark's character, Mark Andrew Smith's character. Zebra, I think I did Carl Edward Wagner.
Did him how? In what way? What are you talking about?
Yeah, he's somewhat different artist on different paperback covers. I guess he says Zebra Publishing had
Oh, okay.
Carl Edward Wagner.
I know his name's familiar, but I thought he was a writer, so I might be just confusing him with somebody else.
Yeah, I don't know off the top of my head either, but yeah.
Looks like the interview's over. All right, I'm leaving.
Now I was just grabbing something. This is the poster that I just.
That looks good.
Yeah, that's Martian Jones from the Gladstone School for World Conquerors series.
Okay.
And
for a split second, I thought it was Ant-Man in space, but yeah, it looks cool.
Yeah. But that's what John owes me money for. Eventually, if he ever gets around to it. But he lives right by me, so he'll eventually get over the house and pick it up. But yeah. Right now, I mean, what are you working on right now?
Well, like I said, I continue to do stuff for Onyx Path, who took over the White Wolf stuff. I do stuff for them very, very regularly, illustrations for their books. But as I look up on my board of work to be done, a lot of what I've been doing lately is more just commissions for individuals. And a lot of it is related to magic in one way or another, altered cards or commissions or things like that. But yeah, for me, it's mainly like one commission at a time kind of thing. I don't really have any big project that I'm doing anything for that I can think of. It's usually just the Onyx Path stuff might be anywhere from 4 to 20 illustrations at a time. Sometimes I'll do stuff for trading card companies like Cryptozoic is one company that they'll do a card set based on a specific property like Lord of the Rings.
Right.
And I've done stuff for them a couple of times. I'm trying to think if there's anything
decent for that.
Huh?
They pay you decent enough for that?
No, not really. The sketch card market, it's really a weird market. I think it's mainly geared towards new artists because the Cryptozoic ones weren't terrible, but some of the Marvel sets and stuff that people will get in on, they might pay you like $5 a card, you know.
If that.
Yeah, if that. And the idea is, I guess you should be able to make something on the visibility you get from that.
Yeah, your
artist first. Yeah, but even that, in my limited experience, that doesn't pay off as much as they think it does, or they think it should.
No, they don't. Yeah, I worked for Upper Deck on the Marvel Master cards twice, Marvel Masterpieces, and the first time I did it, they said, "Well, you got to do a preview set on regular paper, show us what you're going to do."
Really?
Yeah, to get approved by both the Upper Deck and the Marvel art director.
Okay.
So they approved my images, right? So I did the exact same images on the cards. Now I only done 6 out of 30 that I was supposed to do. But okay, well, I'm going to scan them. I scan them and I send them over to the guy on Upper Deck, Mark Irwin, and he goes, "Okay, no problem. Well, let me run this by the Marvel guys," and they said, "No, that's no good." And I said, "Well, how can it be 90 good when they were perfectly fine when I sent it to you for the preliminaries?"
Yeah.
So they're like, "Well, we don't want them." I was like, "Okay." So they gave me like $1 a card as a kill fee.
Yeah, I know. It's like
so they did that, and then I did something for the Joe Jusco's Masterpiece Anniversary Edition. I did like 6 cards, and they accepted 2 of them. It's like,
I had a similar thing happen, although mine turned out a lot better than yours. I had a similar thing happen with a World of Warcraft card set that someone was doing, and I did
no,
like
before you do that, do you have any collected art books or any place like that for on your site for sale or anything like that?
well, I have one book that I self-published that I have a few copies left of. So you can basically just send me an instant message on Facebook or something. It's like, I think like $25 a piece, and it's mainly a collection of my best horror fantasy art that isn't attached to a property that I'd have to get approval for. A lot of it's work that was done for White Wolf and that sort of thing. And it
Okay.
has like some behind the scenes stuff like photographs and sketches and things. But that's really the only book on me that's out there. And like I said, I just did it myself. So I just don't have the kind of draw that it takes for like IDW or someone to come do a big cool book on. I have a ton of art, but not big, huge, properties that would gain the interest for someone to do that.
Not unless, like you say, if someone wanted to pay the licensing to use the Magic of the Gathering stuff, then you could have that.
Yeah, and I've always wanted, like, for example, I've always wanted to do a book of all the music-related art that I've done, because I've done a ton over the years for various reasons. But then you'd have to get approval of so many people to publish something like that. It's just not worth it.
Well, not unless you get a big enough draw for it. Yeah, it's hard to say. I mean, a lot of times, they don't charge you. I mean, when I did my last start book, which was 10 years ago, I asked a lot of different people for licensing, and they're like, yeah, "Just do it."
Oh, that's great. That's great.
Because you're only going to have 500 copies. You're not mass marketing it or anything.
Yeah, and thanks for asking. By the way, not many people ask for something like that.
So he's going to probably contact you and get a copy.
Yeah, and I'll sign it when I send it out and stuff. So that's good.
Thank you, PCA.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. And, well, we've been on for about a little over an hour and a half, and it's that makes it about 7:30 your time.
Yeah, 7:40. Yep.
Yeah, and that means it should be pretty much time to call it a night.
Yeah, my stomach's going to be growling any day now. I'm sure any minute now.
Yeah, and thank you for coming on and watching the show, Avenger. We appreciate it. Thank you, John, and Mark, and
John.
And I know the other guy who wasn't here very long, Nighthawk. Quite a few other guys. We had like 3 to 6 coming in throughout the show, in and out. So,
yeah, I can say a few places they can find my stuff if they want.
Absolutely.
Well, of course, there's Facebook. Everybody's on the Facebook, so I have a lot of stuff there you can just see. But then I also have my website, which is technically also just a portfolio site. But there's this website called Store Envy, and I have a page there that I sell a lot of Magic-related stuff, like play mats and cards and all that kind of stuff. And then I have stuff up in a couple other sites where you can get all kinds of iterations of the art. There's this one site called Fine Art America, and they have a sister site called Pixels.com. And I have a lot of work there that's available as like yoga mats, cups, shower curtains, pillows, almost anything you can imagine. So if someone happens to like my artwork in general,
what you do is you go to KenMeyerJr.com. Let me just put it in here for you.
Yeah, KenMeyerJr.com. And that's mainly to see work. And there's a link on the main page that references the Store Envy thing. So.
And the Fine Art America, both.
Yeah.
It's on the front home page.
Yeah.
And
and I'm on Instagram and stuff too. But Facebook is probably the place that I post most things because it's just easy. It's easy and fast.
Right, and this is what the page looks like.
Yep, yep. And so you can see the main link.
And you can see the link to the Store Envy.
There's a text link there for Store Envy.
Yep. So you got the links, and you know, a lot of cool stuff. And you and I are going to probably catch up some more in the future.
Yeah, sure.
And I definitely have to be back when we get some of the other guys from Fanzine Appreciation page.
Yeah, you get someone like Russ Mahiris and a couple of those guys together. It'll be a lot of fun to talk about.
Yeah, because
each one of us, we all have our own specific experience, you know, exactly. So it all adds up when you have several people together.
Yeah. So, you know, I appreciate everyone coming in and
You're
watching this week. And of course, I thank you for saving my butt this week, because that was like I was almost thinking I was going to have to cancel this week's show, not just because of, basically partly because of what happened with the power outage, but,
right?
But yeah, just one of those weeks. All right, folks. Let's see what we got going on here. I gotta rephrase that and do that. And where is it? Here we go. If you want to reach, now you know where to reach Ken is at KenMeyerJr.com or on Facebook at Ken Meyer. It is a Ken Meyer Jr. Yes.
Yeah, I actually have two pages. I have one that's sort of more of a public page, but I don't really treat them much differently, except I do more on just the basic page, which is, if you want, I'll show it to you just so you can, you know, what to actually see.
Okay,
it's this one. So right now you'll see the icon for me is this little kid when I was a little kid drawing. So
you'll see the oh shoot, what's his name there? Musician there.
Elton John.
Elton John. I was trying to think of his real name. Bernie Taupin, maybe.
Oh,
what's his real name? Bernie
Taupin's his partner. Yeah, his writing partner. Yeah,
okay, his writing partner. Okay, I was confusing it too. But yeah. So.
But that image will probably change because I change that main image like every couple of days. So just look for that little picture of a little tiny kid, which is me drawing at the table there.
That's cool. All right, then. If you guys want to reach me, you can reach me on a lot of different places. On Facebook at Lewis.BrightRaven, at Twitter at LewisBrightRave2. That's RAV2. DeviantArt.com/BrightRaven. Do you have a DeviantArt.com?
I do, but I haven't updated it for a long time. I have a lot of stuff on there, but I don't have a lot of new stuff there.
Understood. YouTube, you can reach me at Quoth Raven, Lewis Bright Raven. Lots of cool videos there to watch.
Yeah, I have a YouTube, but I have some videos up there as well.
And email us quotheravenlbr72@gmail.com for this show specifically. But if you can't reach me through there, try lewisbrightraven@yahoo.com. On Mondays, we usually do comics, news, and reviews. On Wednesdays, I tell you what I got at my local comic shop or what I got in the mail that week from whether I'm crowdfunding or whatever. Thursdays is our roundtable talk. We have topical discussion with different guests. And Friday night, which is tomorrow night, is our genre night. And I am not sure what we're doing yet, but we'll think of something. And then this weekend be my live draw. And I still don't know exactly which one I'm inking yet, but I'm inking 1 or 2 pages. And we'll take a quick look at that. I'm either inking this Predator and Batman page over Peter Vale.
That's a nice one.
And I'm still, I'm tightening up the blue line from it. Because I didn't, it printed out a little bit too light. And then there's this Mia Raven from the series Recovery Incorporated by artist Michael Pennick. And I got to redo the not redo, but add the details to the motorcycle on that still. Because he did that in SketchUp. You know what SketchUp is?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
and some of the details aren't there. But he sent me the photo of the motorcycle that he wants it to be. So
Yeah.
pull that out and then just make it look cool. That's what inkers do, ladies and gentlemen. We don't just trace. But
All right, I have to go make something to eat. I'm getting hungry.
alrighty, man. Thanks for coming on, man. I really appreciate it.
Have a good rest of the night.
Yep, you too.
Bye bye.
Have a good night. Okay, folks. Thanks for being here, and I will see you guys soon on probably tomorrow night at 9. And have a good day.